by Stephen Miller recently on television, comparing the new executive order to the old executive order. CNN Jessica Schneider has more on the ruling. She joins us now. So what are you learning, Jessica?
Well, Anderson, we know that this is once again a temporary restraining order, putting that halt to the second incarnation of the travel ban. It was, of course, supposed to go into effect in just about 4 hours, 12:01 a.m. This is the exact same recourse that we saw back on February 3rd, that time from a Seattle federal judge. This means the travel ban, it will not take effect. But, you know, interesting, Anderson, you touched on it. One of the main points from the opinion, the judge there talking about the overall intent on television, talking about how President Trump asked him the best way to legally implement a Muslim ban. In fact, at one point, the judge in this case, Derek Watson, he really mocks the Trump administration for saying that this isn't religiously motivated because, as he pointed out, the 6 countries that were included on this list in this 90-day ban, he said they have a Muslim population in the high 90%. So I'll read you some of the language, very strong, that the judge points out here. He says, "The illogic of the government's contentions is palpable. The notion that one can demonstrate animus toward any group of people only by targeting all of them at once is fundamentally flawed." He continues to say the court declines to relegate its Establishment Clause analysis to a purely mathematical exercise. So a lot of strong language in this opinion, Anderson, but at the end of the day, this temporary restraining order in place, this travel ban will be blocked for now. We're waiting for next steps.
We should, and just including next steps. I mean, this is out of Hawaii, but also Washington State judges looking at this as well as elsewhere.
Yeah, there have been a lot of lawsuits, as you can imagine, over the past few weeks since this ban was announced. We've seen hearings in Maryland. Also, we're waiting for that ruling out of Washington State, where Judge Robart was the one who ruled back in February. So a lot ongoing, but, you know, this is the one that takes precedent right now and halted.
Yeah, Jessica Schneider, appreciate the update. I want to go now to our Jeff Zeleny. He is traveling with the president, who is going to be speaking tonight from Nashville, Tennessee, where the president is also running late. So do you know if the president's delay has anything to do with the court ruling, and has there been any reaction at all so far from the administration?
Well, Anderson, the president was informed about this shortly after the ruling was handed down, and I am told his aides and, in fact, the entire White House counsel's office back in Washington was indeed poring over this ruling. And as Jessica was saying, it includes so many of the president's own words from back in the campaign trail, as you were playing earlier, to his tweets and other things his advisors have said. But we do believe that he is going to address this tonight at the campaign rally. You can probably hear behind me here, Lee Greenwood is singing "God Bless the USA." This feels like a campaign rally. Indeed, it is a campaign rally. And in some respects, it's back to the drawing board for this president. This is one of the major campaign pledges that he made about the travel ban. And this is now going to start over from the scratch. I'm going to turn around now, Anderson. You can see the president entering this arena right now. He's entering to Lee Greenwood singing "God Bless the USA." You can be sure he will talk about this as soon as this song ends, Anderson. This changes the moment of this rally. It certainly heightens the urgency for what the president must do now for one of his key campaign pledges. Anderson?
Any idea what could be next from the White House? And I mean, another rewrite of this executive order? Or, you know, the President Trump had said, "I'll see you in court," after the judge ruled the last time around. Could they take this all the way?
Anderson, we do not know. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear that. It's very loud in here. We do not know here, but I'll just turn this back over to you as we watch Donald Trump here now take the stage. Anderson?
All right, Jeff Zeleny, thanks very much. We're going to monitor what the president says. If, in fact, he does talk about this, we'll bring you his comments. Joining us right now is CNN legal analyst Paul Callan, former Trump senior communications advisor Jason Miller. He's currently a CNN political commentator. Joining us now by phone, also Harvard University law professor Alan Dershowitz. Also on the phone, his former student, CNN senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin. Professor Dershowitz, let me start with you. What do you make of the Hawaii judge's ruling here?
Well, I've read it, and it raises a fundamental constitutional issue of first impression that will get to the Supreme Court and will lead to a major decision, and that is, can you take statements made during a political campaign and use them as a way of striking down a facially constitutional executive order? That would be a case of first impression, and it could go either way. There is a Supreme Court decision in a case down here in Florida involving a Hialeah religion in which the court did look at statements made by members of the city council while they were serving in office. But here you have a judge who is finding statements made during a campaign. If you can take those statements into account, Trump loses because the statements are devastating. But if the court rules that you can't take those statements into account and you have to look only at the text of the order, then Trump wins, because the court is dead wrong when it says it's unconstitutional if it includes 6 countries, all of which are 90% Muslim. That's perfectly constitutional, because that's what Obama did. So what the court basically ruled is, if Obama does it, it's constitutional. But if Trump does it, it's unconstitutional because of what Trump said during the campaign. That is a fascinating constitutional issue.
Jeff, I want to get your reaction to both what the professor said, but also first to the ruling.
Well, I'm surprised. I thought the changes in the executive order would be enough to make a court uphold it. I think Alan is exactly right that it is unusual. It is unprecedented in my experience to take campaign statements from a president into consideration in evaluating the constitutionality of an executive order. I think I think, frankly, it's going to be vulnerable on appeal, this decision. But, you know, the sheer number of times Donald Trump said on AC 360, in speech, that he wanted a Muslim ban. That is what really has come back to haunt him, and that is just not how courts usually.
Well, you know, Jeff, to your point, it's also interesting because the court also referenced Stephen Miller, who's obviously an advisor in Donald Trump's White House. Fox News, talking about the new travel ban, and I want to read what he said about the new one as compared to the old. He said, fundamentally, you're still going to have the same basic policy outcome for the country, but you're going to be responsive to a lot of very technical issues that were brought up by the court, and those will be addressed. But in the terms of protecting the country, those basic policies are still going to be in effect. So it wasn't just comments the president himself made as a candidate. This was while President Trump was in the White House, and now they're pointing the finger at Stephen Miller.
That's true, but I mean, if you listen to what Stephen Miller said there, I mean, frankly, I don't think it's all that objectionable. I mean, he said we are protecting the country, and we are going to do it the best way we can. And the fact that these countries are Muslim, predominantly Muslim, is not what this case is about. The administration asserted it's about protecting the country. I don't. Obviously the judge thought all that language was just a pretense. This was all about Muslims. It wasn't about safety. But the president has broad authority in this area. And I just think courts are going to be very reluctant, other courts, to second guess in these circumstances.
Yeah. Jason, I mean, to that point, as Jeff said, I mean, the president traditionally does have broad authority and what needs to be done to keep the country safe, as opposed to some court in Hawaii or in Washington or elsewhere. What do you think the White House's next move is going to be?
Well, we'll see. Obviously, the president's speaking at this moment, and I imagine that he'll be diving into this very shortly. But while I'm not a lawyer, I think there are a couple common sense things that I can point out here. Number one, this appears to be a very politicized ruling. Even saw some of the question marks being raised by Jeff and with Alan for the fact that the administration took their time. They feel that they got this right. They put it out there with a 10-day period, and for just tonight for this to be happening, I think this really reeks of political opportunism and playing political games. The other thing too is when you look at voters around the country, they want to see a president out there creating jobs and want to see it keeping the country safe. This is exactly what that's going to. And going to your point about what Stephen Miller was saying, Stephen Miller was simply making the case that the president and the administration want to keep the country safe. And so for this judge, this really seems like an outlier to go and do this. I think it's going to backfire. I think it's going to look terrible. I think when people are fed up and distrustful of our court system, they can point to something like this.
Paul, just in terms of the ruling, I want to get your reaction to this. The judge said the illogic of the government's contentions is palpable. The notion that one can demonstrate animus toward any group of people only by targeting all of them at once is fundamentally flawed. That gets to the argument that, well, this isn't an attempt, a Muslim ban, because it only targets people from 6 countries.
Yes, and the entire focus of the Hawaiian judge's ruling was on the Establishment Clause. That is, that this is religious-based discrimination against Muslims. And the decision reads like a very angry in 2013, something I'm sure that Mr. Trump will bring up.
But I think confirmed unanimously.
Yeah, confirmed unanimously. But I think another argument that the Trump administration will lodge against this is, if you're going to discriminate against Muslims, why would you only apply this to 6 Muslim countries? Why wouldn't you ban all Muslims? They're going to say this is a limited, targeted ban on countries that